Warning, the following program contains scenes of death.
Police documents state that when police entered the address that David Dobson shared with his parents, younger sister, and a brother, and announced that he was being charged for the murder of ڈارلین Proریلو, he was eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And not only did he seem relaxed, but he poured himself another glass of milk and finished his sandwich.
Peel Police now have a suspect in custody charged with the first-degree murder of 16-year-old ڈارلین Proریلو. 17-year-old David James Dobson will appear in provincial court in Brampton tomorrow. An autopsy revealed the victim died of a fractured skull and asphyxiation after she was sexually assaulted. She was found last Friday behind a factory in Mississauga.
I'd only met ڈارلین Proریلو twice in her lifetime. Once, late after a party, she stepped up on a curb beside me, and we looked at each other, and I introduced myself, and she said she already knew my name. And then she introduced herself, and I said I already knew her name. She smiled, and then she walked away. The second time, I was working, collecting shopping carts in a supermarket parking lot, and it was Christmas, about 10:30 at night. And I remember, because it was snowing, and the snow glistened like diamonds, and she spotted me from a bus stop that she was waiting at. She walked over and asked me if she could bum a smoke off me, and I said I didn't smoke. And then she smiled. I said neither do I. And then she turned and skipped away. And that was the last time that I saw ڈارلین Proریلو.
Okay. You've got to identify what your needs are. You know, don't always rely on other people to do that for you.
He looked straight into the eyes of my mother, and then into my eyes. I can't tell you how that felt. I felt his look take my breath away.
I didn't know Dave Dobson well, but what I did know, I didn't like. Picking on younger kids, intimidating female teachers. He'd attacked me once for no more than the length of my hair, and at 6'2" and a full beard. He wasn't exactly a typical 17-year-old. But I knew Dave's sister Laura well. We'd grown up together, gone to the same school. I'd walk by the Dobsons' house every day on the way to school with my friends Dean Barton and Sean Mooney. And Dave would always be out front, calling us fags, being an asshole. On Laura's 15th birthday, she threw a party. We were all in the basement, drinking, smoking, making out, being teenagers. But Dave wasn't there. He was upstairs, lurking in the shadows. And I remember making a joke about the record player, saying about how cheap it looked. Kind of like one of those Mickey Mouse toys. You know the score. But Laura told me to shut up, looked terrified, and told me that it was her brother's. And everybody started laughing. Then out of the darkness, a hand reached over and turned it off and started smashing it up. And I heard screaming, like an animal. It was too dark to see. And the party cleared out onto the street. Then we saw Dave beating on a kid that we called Puppet Boy on account of him having cerebral palsy. I guess Dave didn't like a cripple laughing at his record player. But who does?
Dobson, for 17.
Someone is dead. You're not obliged to say anything unless you wish to do so. Whatever you say may be given in evidence.
And then after that?
If you want to call a lawyer from a free legal advice service, we'll provide you with a telephone, and you can call a toll-free number for immediate legal advice.
Right.
If you wish to contact any other lawyer, a telephone and telephone books will be provided to you. I'm going to call it all of it. Okay, so I'll just keep this running. We'll walk with me here.
Right.
Very tight security. The first-degree murder trial of 18-year-old David Dobson continued in Brampton today. Dobson admits he killed 16-year-old ڈارلین Proریلو last May, but he thinks he is guilty of second-degree murder, not first. Proریلو was found bludgeoned and strangled behind a factory in Mississauga.
ڈارلین was a popular but shy girl who just finished her second year at high school. I was visiting her boyfriend, waiting at a bus stop, rushing home for a curfew that she'd never make. Dobson, who'd recently bought his first car that he'd been saving for, was out cruising the streets. A well-known loser who'd recently been kicked out of school for fighting with yours truly. And now he was working in a factory. Did I say well-known? No, he was just a loser. No one will ever know what happened that night, except for Dave Dobson and ڈارلین. And she ain't talking. After the murder, Dobson taunted the police with a letter titled "Catch Me If You Can," dropping that and a necklace of ڈارلین's in a book return in the public library behind his house, giving the precise and gruesome details of how he murdered ڈارلین.
Attention, Inspector Jim Wingate. This letter is in regards to the death of ڈارلین Nikki Proریلو, age 16. This is a detailed description of what happened the night of her death, May 6th, 1982, 11:20 p.m. At 11:05, I picked her up hitchhiking on Dixie Road on the overpass at QEW Southside, headed north. I asked her where she was going. She said Dixie and Blur. I said that I was going that way, so she hopped in the back seat. She felt secure. I drove her up to the townhouse and said that I was going to just turn around. I did, and then I kept going. Right through the stop sign, turned right, went to the first light, turned left, and then she said this is fine, that I could let her out here. I ignored her and kept going. I drove through every light and stop sign so that she wouldn't jump out if I stopped. Then I drove around the factories for approximately 10 minutes. When I pulled into the 600 group where I parked, by the woodpile, rolled up the window, I looked at her. Then I lunged at her in the back seat. She screamed, and I kept saying, "Be quiet, quiet." I told her that all I was after was sex. She was very quiet, except for to ask me for a smoke. I said I didn't smoke. She said okay. I then slid my hand up her shirt and under her bra. She gasped and smiled. So I lifted her shirt and began sucking. I then told her to pull down her pants. She did. I pulled down mine and spread her legs. I then asked her if she was a virgin. She said no. I then started to look for her hole. I found it and put myself in it. She also said she didn't want to get pregnant. I kept this in mind. I then ejaculated into her vagina. She moaned and climaxed. And then we both pulled up our jeans. And she asked if she could sit in the front seat. I said okay, but I held on to her while we got out to ensure that she wouldn't run. I then took her to the other side of the car, where I told her I had a present for her. and I reached through the window under my seat and produced a small brick. She screamed, "Oh no, oh no," terrified, and I said this way she wouldn't get pregnant. So then I hit her in the head with it, and she didn't fall to the ground. So I pushed her down to the ground, and I covered her mouth while she screamed. I kept saying, "Shh, shh," and she quietened, and said not to strangle her. So I picked up a brick and proceeded hitting her head. It was making a knocking noise. I then dropped it on her face, and she started choking on blood.
Dave Dobson's letter went on and on, which can only be described as a moment-by-moment account of the brutal rape, torture, and murder of Darlene Prouriello that culminated in, among other things, dropping a large cinder block on Darlene's face, piercing her heart multiple times with an 11-inch industrial nail attached to a plank, went down on her corpse, and then had sex with it, and ended his psychopath's guide to dating by urinating in the hole that once was her face, and then concluded the letter by saying that he'd kill a young girl each year on the anniversary of her death.
Now a 2-0 Blue Jay lead. In the second,
I didn't want to go back into the media arena and be subjected to what I was subjected to in the past. But more than that, I didn't want to subject my victim's family to it, and had felt that it was wrong to re-victimize them. I knew what I did. I know what I've done. And at the same time, I am accountable for the offense that I committed, and I've committed myself to serving out the length of time that Corrections Canada and the Pro Board feel necessary. So until they're prepared to work with me. And a big part of it, I had felt that I was cheating. I felt as though I was cheating the victim's family on the time being served. And I just thought, well, frankly, I'm feeling pretty comfortable about serving time. It's quite easy to do. And I didn't want to go back and put my family through this. Didn't want to put my victim's family through it.
But it turns out that old Dirty Dave wasn't being completely honest. And rather than not wanting to spare his victim's family the anguish of another parole hearing, leaked prison documents discuss prison officials' concern about his first serious relationship with a fellow inmate, and that Dobson now didn't want to be separated from his lover. Isn't that sweet?
Fantastic Wednesday we have had, Bill, on the traffic scene, all of our expressways.
After killing Darlene, Dave went home and he slept like a baby. And in the morning, he even drove by the body again and went back to take a look. And when he'd watched the news and they hadn't found the body like he'd hoped, he called the factory, calling himself Fred, giving them hints where they could find Darlene. He'd even phoned in a bomb threat, hoping they'd stumble across her. And they did. The shy girl laid out her legs spread for the world to see, as Dobson watched from his work nearby. And as a child, 3 weeks short of his 17th birthday, lay in a morgue, Dobson spent his time trying to find the parents' phone number so he could taunt them some more. But his ego was costly, because detectives traced the calls, and they arrested him at his home 6 days later.
I was looking into the eyes that last saw my sister alive. I was looking at the last face that my sister ever saw as she begged and cried and pleaded for her life.
But the family's pain and suffering, it didn't end there. And when the Prouriellos wrote their impact statement, according to Canadian law, Dobson got to read it. And he was offended when they'd called him an animal, and it had to be removed.
The impact statement should be about our feelings, should be about what was taken from us. Not about worrying about his feelings and his emotions. This is our impact statement, not his. When we talk about respect, respect is something that is earned. It's not something that should be demanded. It's not given, it's earned. My question is, where was my sister's respect when he brutally sexually assaulted her and beat her head into the ground with a concrete building block?
Dave Dobson has now been in jail since he was 17 years old for over 37 years. He was due out after only 25, and he can now apply for parole every 2 years while waiting comfortably in a minimal fenceless security prison, enjoying day passes when he's never shown an ounce of remorse. And though he claims to have found God, he's regularly passed on threats to the Proریلو family through his sisters. Inside prison, he's been involved in several same-sex relationships, including one with a murderer and the other with a priest, and he's yet to take a psychiatric examination, even though his release could be imminent. Recent leaks from inside the prison have said that Dobson may have terminal cancer or AIDS, or both. And the reason that he's staying in is so he can get the best medical care Canada offers at the taxpayer's expense. And ڈارلین, a tomboy who dreamt of being an electrician, the young girl who'd been plagued her entire life of nightmares of being stalked by a monster, with her mother telling her that there was no such thing. She was wrong. That book says no more.